Okay, let me ask you something. What if a lightning strike didn't just, end your day, but instead it threw you across entire centuries? And what if you landed right in front of a legendary philosopher for a private lesson in politics? It sounds wild, I know, but we're about to dive into this incredible story of a Thai farmer, an impossible trip through time, and a conversation that gets to the heart of power, justice, and what it really takes to build a fair society.
So let's meet our main character, Bok Ken. He's a farmer from Ubon Ratchathani in Thailand, and one afternoon he's just taking a nap in his rice paddy. Totally normal, right? Well, a bolt of lightning hits the palm tree he's sleeping under, and just like that, he's gone. When he opens his eyes, nothing is the same, and all he can manage to get out are these first, completely bewildered words.
I mean, just try to imagine his confusion. One minute, you're in a world of rice paddies and cell phone towers. The next, all of that's gone. Instead, there are these vineyards just stretching on forever. He kind of recognizes it as France, sure, but it's like an older, way more rustic version. It's completely alien. All the familiar sights and sounds of his life have just been erased.
So as you can imagine, he's just wandering through this strange old world, totally lost. And then he bumps into a local guy, out for a walk. All Bok Ken wants are some simple directions, just something to help make sense of it all. But the conversation they're about to have, well, it's going to be anything but simple.
The whole thing starts getting even weirder. They're talking, and the Frenchman has never even heard of Thailand. He only knows it as Siam. After this totally bewildering exchange, Bok Ken asks the one simple question that is about to turn this whole bizarre dream into a history-altering reality. And there it is. The man's full name is Charles Louis de Secondat Baron de Labrede et de Montesquieu. Yeah, that Montesquieu, the legendary political philosopher whose ideas on government Bok Ken had actually studied. The shock must have been just immense. He hasn't just time traveled, he is literally standing face to face with a giant of political thought.
Now, Montesquieu is, as you can imagine, pretty intrigued by this guest from the future, so he invites Bok Ken to his castle. And Bok Ken, he recognizes this for the unbelievable opportunity it is. He decides to use his own knowledge of modern Thai politics to ask the master himself about his most important foundational ideas. So Montesquieu breaks it down. He lays out his core theory, which, by the way, is the bedrock of so many modern democracies. Here's the gist. For a government to be balanced and actually protect people's freedom, its power has to be split up. It has to be cleanly divided. You've got the legislative branch, they make the laws. The executive, they enforce the laws. And the judicial, they judge cases based on those laws. Three totally distinct jobs. But, and this is the absolutely crucial part, it's not enough just for these powers to be separate. They also have to be able to check each other. It's a system of checks and balances, right? This way, the legislature can't just go wild making any law it wants, the executive can't turn into a dictator, and the courts can't just start making up their own rules. It's this built-in tension between them that stops any one branch from becoming a tyranny. And to show just how dangerous it is when this goes wrong, Bok Ken leaves him a real-world example from Thailand's own history. He tells Montesquieu about a military leader, Field Marshal Sarat Tonorat, who basically grabbed all three powers and held them himself. He gave himself the absolute authority to execute people on his order alone. I mean, it's the exact nightmarish scenario of fear and lost freedom that Montesquieu warned about. It's a perfect, chilling example of why these ideas are still so important, even centuries later. So Bok Ken pushes it further. He asks about a specific ruling by the Thai Constitutional Court, and Montesquieu's take on it is just razor sharp. He says, look, a court's job is to interpret the law, period. It's not to interfere with the legislature, whose job it is to make the law. The second a court starts expanding its own power, ruling on things the Constitution never gave it the authority to, it's basically like it's writing a whole new constitution all by itself. And that just completely undermines the entire democratic system.
Okay, so this deep philosophical debate is about to get a major reality check. Montesquieu invites Bok Ken for a carriage ride to Paris. And it's on this journey that all these abstract ideas about justice and power are going to get slammed right up against the brutal, harsh reality of inequality.
The scene that hits Bok Ken is it's gut-wrenching. He sees this old, bent-back grandmother and her granddaughter, and they're picking up single individual grains of wheat that were left behind in a field, just so they can have enough to bake a little bit of bread and survive. It is a picture of the most extreme poverty, and it's this terrible, stark contrast to the high-minded debate that was just happening back in a nobleman's fancy castle.
And Montesquieu explains the system, this rigid, totally unfair system that creates this kind of suffering. See, French society at the time was split into three classes, called the three estates. You had the first and second estates. That's the clergy and the nobility. They're a tiny, super privileged minority. They own pretty much all the land, and get this, they pay 0 taxes. Then you have the third estate. That's basically everyone else. And they have 0 privileges and have to pay all the taxes that fund the state, the wars, and the ridiculously lavish lifestyle of the royal court.
So seeing this kind of raw injustice just pushes their conversation to a whole new level. It's not just about the mechanics of government anymore. Now they're talking about the moral soul of a nation. What does equality really mean? And what's the actual foundation of a truly just society?
And Montesquieu's response here is incredibly powerful. He argues that real morality can only exist in a democratic system. And you might ask, why? Well, it's because democracy is built on one simple, powerful principle. Everyone is equal before the law. You just can't have one set of rules for the poor and another for the rich. Justice, to be real justice, has to be blind.
And this leads to a pretty radical idea for his time. He's saying democracy is essential because it accepts that people will disagree. It stops any one group, especially some privileged elite, from standing up and saying, we're the only ones who know what's good or moral for everybody else. No, in a true democracy, even morality itself has to be debated. It can't just be dictated from the top down.
So, in the end, Bak Ken's impossible journey just goes to show that this tension between power and justice, this fight for real equality, it's a timeless struggle. It never really goes away. The conversation between this farmer and this philosopher, men separated by centuries but connected by the same fundamental questions of fairness, it leaves us with a challenge, right? It leaves us asking, in our own time, in our own societies, what's our role in that very same fight?